Now joined by NFL reporter of Fox Sports, Carmen Vitali. And you've been specializing in the NFC North for a few seasons. You know these Detroit Lions well.
I do.
And we're going to even talk a little bit about Chicago because we have to.
I know.
But
Sorry, guys.
I want to get your take on one of the newest coaches for Detroit, D-line coach Dannie Rogers, formerly of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where you've spent time with him. What can you tell us about Coach Rogers?
First of all, you will love Casey just in the building. He is so gregarious. He's such a fun guy to talk to. But the biggest thing about Casey is how knowledgeable he is. And he has been around the block. He's been part of multiple systems. Him and Todd Bowles were together for so long. So you know he knows how to do those stunts up front, really get exotic with it. You look at the guys that he has been able to coach, the guys like Vita Vea in Tampa that are absolute monsters. He knows exactly what to look for as far as evaluations go. And then just his scheme in general and the way that he really takes pride in things starting up front for the defense. Those are responsibilities that he thrives with. And I've honestly heard from even some of your guys that have met him and have been in meetings with him so far. They're like, oh my God, we've already started to implement some of the things that he's talked about. And he is so knowledgeable about what he's talking about. He is the absolute best. I'm so excited for him. I'm so excited for you guys, for Detroit to get to know him because he is such a bulldog and I love him.
How is he going to really mix and mingle with Kelvin Shepard, who is elevated from linebackers coach to now defensive coordinator?
I'm so incredibly happy for Kelvin, by the way. I think Dannie Rogers will be a guy that Kelvin can lean on because he has all of this experience. He's also been a D coordinator. When Bowles got the bump up to head coach, Casey was his defensive coordinator underneath him. That happened at the Jets as well when Todd was the head coach there. So Casey has that experience, but he also has the flexibility and the collaboration that he's going to be so good for Shep. I really think that.
Two new coordinators in Detroit with Ben Johnson departing for Chicago, Aaron Glenn departing for the New York Jets. John Morton comes in to fill in as OC. How much of the philosophy, how much do you expect to change with those two now at the helm?
You know, it was so interesting because I was at Ben Johnson's opening presser in Chicago and he said, like, well, the runway's built. The runway's built in Detroit. And I think he really meant it from the standpoint that Brad Holmes has done such a wonderful job with this roster construction. And that insulates you so much as far as the scheme and everything. If it relatively remains similar and you're not talking about a total overhaul where then you have to overhaul the roster too, I really think that you can still be successful in Detroit with these guys. And I do think that Detroit's not going to take that much of a step back. Like, I don't know if that's a hot take at this point, but that's kind of what I've been saying this entire time with how well this roster is built and continues to be built. You have guys, especially when it comes to guys like Shep, who have been there, where you're elevating someone who's already familiar with things too. So all of that said, if you have confidence in your evaluation skills of coaches, which clearly Dan Campbell does and has a right to, I'm not worried about the Detroit Lions.
In regards to this roster, you look at how Detroit finished a little bit more abruptly than they would have liked. But taking a look at the personnel on that team, what's the number one area of need, if there is a need?
I know. It's so hard. I think that you always kind of gravitate towards the secondary a little bit more just because of the fact that there's always it's a matter of when, not if, that injury is kind of set in. And we saw towards the back half of the season how much that really mattered, especially with that group in particular. I mean, it was the entire defense. But then it was the back level in particular. You really see how teams can start to exploit you, especially when you get into like that postseason competition. So shore that up as much as possible. I know that that's probably the focus every year. That's the priority every year. And it just doesn't necessarily work out. But that doesn't mean you stop trying.
Mm-hmm. Just taking into consideration what Detroit did this past season, the turnover, is the window still there?
Absolutely, because the roster turnover isn't there. And you look at the guys that they have locked up, you know, the guys that the homegrown guys that they gave new contracts to, that they extended, and then you have the guys that they drafted that are still under team control, 2026, 2027. Until you don't have that continuity on the roster, then I'm not going to say that the window's closed. I think the window is still open again because this roster is so strong.